Music filled the air, and colorful lights flashed to the beat. It was just any birthday party, but for me at that moment, it was the most important party of all. I remember walking into the room, my heart jumping with anticipation, when I first saw Emily. She was in a corner, laughing with her friends, her eyes shining like stars. As soon as our eyes met, something magical happened. I felt butterflies in my stomach, an instant and undeniable connection.
Who is she?
I asked a friend who was next to me.
It's Emily.
She's new in town, he replied, not understanding the depth of what was beginning to unfold inside me. I decided to get closer. The environment around us seemed to disappear, and all I could feel was the energy between us. When I finally managed to strike up a conversation, his voice was as soft as a melody. Hi, I'm Jake. I introduced myself, trying to hide my nervousness.
Hi, Jake.
Nice to meet you, she smiled, and in that moment, the world around us seemed to spin slower. The conversation flowed naturally. We talked about our favorite songs, our ambitions and dreams. The chemistry between us was palpable, and I knew I was madly in love. But as in every love story, there was an obstacle ahead, her mother, Margaret. After a few weeks of dates and laughter, I decided it was time to introduce Emily to my parents. The idea of having their support made me excited. But what I didn't expect was Margaret's reaction when she found out about our relationship. Emily, you can't be serious, she said, a look of disdain plastered on her face.
This kid isn't what you need.
He's not a good catch. Her mother's words cut Emily like a knife. I was in the room, listening to everything, and frustration started to take over me. However, I knew I needed to fight for us. I heard Emily sigh, clearly torn between her love for me and the pressure her mother was putting on her.
But Mom, I really like him.
He's different, she replied, trying to defend our relationship.
Different?
You mean he is not someone I would approve of? That is not enough, my daughter, Margaret insisted, her voice thick with authority. Determined to win Margaret's approval, I decided to approach her. On a rainy afternoon, nervously knocking on their door, my heart was racing a mile a minute. When she opened the door, the look she gave me was pure indifference. Jake, she said, as if seeing an insect in front of her.
What do you want?
I'd just like to talk a little, if you have time, I replied, trying to maintain my composure. She hesitated, but finally let me in. The room was decorated with trophies and family photos, a true showcase of what Margaret considered success. I sat on the edge of the sofa, and she sat in an armchair opposite, looking at me suspiciously. I want you to know that I like Emily. She's special to me, I began, trying to be sincere.
That's not enough, she cut in.
You need to be more than just a boy who makes my daughter smile. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to show that I'm a good catch, I stated, trying not to let her coldness intimidate me. I highly doubt you can, she replied, with a sarcastic smile. If you really love Emily, you should stay away. This is just her whim. The conversation dragged on, and with each word, I realized that winning over Margaret would be more difficult than I imagined. I left that house with a weight on my chest and the certainty that I would have to fight not only for Emily's love, but also for her trust. What I didn't know was that this battle was just beginning, and that destiny had surprises in store for us that would change our lives forever. The tension in the air was palpable. As soon as I left my mother's house, a mix of anger and confusion came over me.
Her words still echoed in my mind. You deserve someone better, Emily.
What do you see in him that you don't see in men of your class? It was as if Margaret wanted to put me in a box I didn't want to inhabit. The pressure in my chest increased with each step I took toward my car. What I wanted most was to be able to shout to the world how much Jake meant to me, but the shadow of my mother's disapproval seemed to suffocate me. I got in the car and left the city behind, looking for a place that could give me some clarity. The streets became an extension of my internal turmoil. I needed space, a moment to reflect on what I really wanted. Upon arriving at the lake, one of our favorite places, the serene scenery contrasted with the storm brewing inside me. The water reflected the blue sky, while the surrounding trees swayed gently in the breeze. I sat on a bench, trying to organize my thoughts. Jake was everything I ever wanted. He was kind, funny, and made me feel alive. I remembered his smile, the way his eyes sparkled when we talked about our dreams. But the doubt planted by my mother tormented me. I didn't want to disrespect her opinion, but I also couldn't ignore how I felt about Jake. As I struggled with my thoughts, my cell phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a message from Jake.
Hey love.
I was thinking about you.
I hope you are well.
Can we meet later? An involuntary smile appeared on my face as I read his words.
Yes, of course.
I responded quickly, as if that could dispel the clouds hanging over my head. Later, at our usual meeting point, Jake was there, a smile that lit up his face. Hi, are you okay?
He approached, worried.
You seem a little distant.
Hi, Jake.
I'm a little confused. Sincerity has always been one of the pillars of our relationship, and I knew I needed to be honest. And my mother is trying to convince me that you are not the right person for me. I knew she wouldn't like me from the beginning. Jake sighed, a mix of frustration and sadness in his voice.
But I just want you to be happy, Emily.
If that means staying away from me, I'll understand.
No.
That's not what I want. I interrupted, desperation seeping into my words. I just need time to think. I don't know how to deal with this. Jake came over and held my hand. His touch was like a balm to my restless soul.
I love you, Emily.
And I'll be here no matter what you decide. Just don't forget how we feel about each other. Those words touched me deeply. The love we shared was real and intense, and I didn't want to let my mother's influence destroy that. But the doubt persisted, like a shadow that couldn't leave me alone. The sun began to set, turning the sky orange and purple. Shall we go for a walk? I suggested, trying to shake off the dark clouds that surrounded me. Jake nodded, and together we started walking along the trail around the lake, talking about simple things, trying to restore the lightness that had always permeated our relationship. But as we walked, the image of my mother and her insistent words wouldn't leave my head.
What did I really want?
What did my heart scream? I needed time away from her. I needed space to discover what real love was, without the constraints of family pressure. With each step beside Jake, some of the confusion dissipated, but the internal battle was far from over. Emily, you're out of your mind again. Jake interrupted my reverie.
If you need some time, I understand.
I just don't want you to feel pressured.
I know, Jake.
And I thank you for that. But I need time away from my mother. I want to discover who I am, without her expectations. The sincerity in my voice seemed to finally bring some clarity to the turmoil I felt.
He stopped, looking me in the eyes.
So let's do this together. I'm here for you always. Those words gave me strength. The love I felt for Jake was stronger than any intrigue my mother could create. And at that moment, I decided that I would face whatever came my way.
I wasn't alone.
The weekend at the cabin was like a dream. Sunlight danced between the leaves of the trees, creating a play of shadows on the ground as Jake and I settled into a cozy wooden sofa. The smell of the forest invaded the air, and the tranquility of the place seemed to drive away all the problems that surrounded us. This place is perfect, Jake said, looking out the window. His smile was infectious, and I couldn't help but get lost in his eyes. Yes, it's as if we were in a separate world, I replied, laying my head on his shoulder. A world where nothing and no one can reach us. At that moment, we felt like we could dream without limits. We talked about the future, about what we wanted in life, and the words flowed like a river, without barriers. I want to travel the world with you, Jake commented, his eyes shining with excitement. Discover new places, new cultures. And I want to build a home, a place where we can be ourselves, I replied, my heart racing at the possibility. Somewhere where your mother can't find us. Jake laughed, but his expression soon turned serious. I will do everything to win over your mother, Emily. I don't want her to be an obstacle between us. I know, but sometimes it seems like she's determined to separate us. We are stronger than this, he stated, holding my hand firmly. What we feel for each other is real. Nothing can stop this. We returned to the city on Sunday afternoon, and reality hit us like a wave. As soon as we entered the small town, a shadow loomed over us. The dark clouds that formed in the sky seemed to reflect the tension that awaited us. I was filled with a sense of dread as I thought about how my mother might react. As soon as we parked the car, it didn't take long for Margaret to appear, her angry expression cutting through the air like a knife. She approached quickly, and a wave of discomfort washed over me. What were you thinking, Emily? She shouted, drawing the attention of everyone around her. Do you really think you can go around with this boy, and everything will be fine? Jake tensed next to me, and I could feel his palms sweat. Mom, please don't do that here, I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Don't do that here? She repeated, laughing sarcastically. As if I'm going to shut up while you're making the biggest mistake of your life. Those words cut like a blade. I wanted to scream, but I felt paralyzed. Jake's look was one of pain and confusion. He always tried to be strong, but the humiliation in front of these people, who were once our friends and acquaintances, was becoming unbearable. I love your daughter, Margaret, he said finally, his voice firm but shaky. And I will do whatever it takes to earn your respect.
Respect?
Margaret laughed, a laugh that conveyed contempt. You are nothing more than a boy with no future. Do you think you can just show up in her life and everything will be fine? Those words resonated with me like an echo, and I felt my heart sink. I looked at Jake, and the vulnerability in his gaze made my stomach drop.
Mom, that's enough.
I demanded, raising my voice for the first time. I'm tired of this. I choose Jake, and he's not a kid without a future to me. He's everything I ever wanted. The crowd around us fell silent, and the air felt heavy. The fury in my mother's eyes was palpable, and for the first time, I found myself in a dilemma. What would I do now? Stay by Jake's side, or give in to maternal pressure? You don't know what you're doing, Emily, she said, now in a lower tone, but still full of disdain. Those words weighed on me, and I knew that the decision I made would change everything. I looked at Jake, who was waiting anxiously, and realized that no matter what happened, I couldn't let fear stop me from fighting for what I loved. The decision to stay with Jake was an act of courage, but the joy I felt was quickly overshadowed by my mother's evil new plan. I could feel the tension in the air, as if a storm was about to brew. One morning, as we were having breakfast together, Jake looked at me with a worried expression. "Do you think your mother will give up on us?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. "I really hope so, Jake. But knowing my mom, she won't stop until she gets what she wants." I sighed, trying to hide the uncertainty that built up inside me. Days passed and Margaret's pressure seemed to be growing. She was always a strategic woman, and I knew I couldn't underestimate her. But what she did was beyond what I could have imagined. One day, Jake came home with a devastated expression, as if the world had collapsed around him. I lost my job." The words came out of his mouth like a whisper, and my heart skipped a beat. The board decided that I was no longer suitable for the position. They say I didn't meet expectations.
What do you mean by that?
I asked, trying to process the news. "You were one of the best employees on the team." "I know, but," he hesitated, looking at the floor. "There is something more. One of my colleagues said he heard rumors that Margaret was behind it. She made comments about me, about how I wasn't good enough for you." Anger and sadness mixed inside me.
How could she be so cruel?
The financial pressure began to take a toll on us, and the tension was palpable. I tried to be strong, but the weight of the situation was crushing me. The bills started piling up, and Jake seemed increasingly discouraged. "Shall we take a break?" he suggested one silent night, as we looked at the ceiling. "We need a new beginning, away from all this. What do you think about moving to another city, at least temporarily? Do you really think this can help?" I asked, hesitantly. The idea of leaving everything behind was tempting, but also terrifying. "Yes, and it might be exactly what we need. A place where your mother can't reach us." He looked into my eyes with so much desire and hope that I felt compelled to consider.
"All good.
Let's do this." I took a deep breath, determined to fight for us. In the days that followed, we organized our things and made plans for the move. The car was full of boxes and broken dreams, but also of new hopes. The journey to the new city was silent, but filled with expectation. When we arrived, the scenery was completely different.
It was a small town, but full of life.
"Look at that coffee." Jake pointed to a charming place with tables on the sidewalk. "Let's go?"
Of course.
I smiled, feeling the adrenaline of change. While we were drinking coffee, Jake started talking to an old acquaintance who had moved there. It was a contact who could help him get a new job. Hope began to well up within me again, but Margaret's shadow still hung over our heads, like a dark cloud.
"Do you think she will follow us?"
I asked, as Jake spoke to his friend. "No, not if she doesn't know where we are. Let's keep everything secret for now,"
he assured me.
The weeks passed, and Jake was trying hard to find a new job, but the pressure and uncertainty were starting to wear on us. Conversations about the future became more frequent, but also more weighty. I saw the frustration and anxiety in his eyes, and it broke my heart. "Emily, I feel so helpless,"
Jake said one night.
"I don't know how I'm going to be able to sustain this for much longer."
I'm here with you, Jake.
"We will get through this together." I tried to comfort him, but inside, I was also fighting despair. The love we shared was strong, but the difficulties were creating fissures. The financial and emotional pressure started to pull us apart, and I wondered if we could really get through it all. A part of me wanted to believe that love was enough, but doubt was beginning to creep in. "What are we going to do if we don't find a solution soon?" Jake asked, his voice thick with concern. "I don't know, but we can't give up." I looked into his eyes, trying to convey the strength I still felt inside me. We have to fight for ourselves, no matter what. And so, between hopes and fears, we continued to fight, not knowing what fate would have in store for us. We were still adapting to the new city. The move had been a leap of faith, but as Jake settled into his new job, I felt a little like a stranger at home. The truth is that Margaret's shadow still loomed over us, even hundreds of miles away. It was as if she had settled in my mind, always whispering doubts and insecurities. But there was something different in the air, a new hope perhaps, or the promise of a future. One morning, as Jake got ready for work, I sat at the kitchen table, watching him with a mix of admiration and love. He was trying so hard to give us a new life. You look beautiful today, he commented, with a smile that lit up the room. What are you going to do today?
Oh, not much.
Just a few things here. You know how it is, right? I replied, trying to hide the uneasiness that was growing inside me. But the truth was, I had noticed something different about my body. A strange feeling, but at the same time, comforting. It didn't take long for the test to confirm my thoughts. I was pregnant. When Jake came home that night, his heart was racing. I waited for him in the living room, my nerves on edge. Jake, we need to talk here, I said, my voice shaking slightly. He stopped, the expression of curiosity and concern mixing on his face.
What happened, love? He came closer, holding my hand.
I could feel his heat, and it gave me courage. I'm pregnant, I confessed, almost in a whisper. The silence that followed seemed endless. His eyes widened, and for a moment, I feared he didn't know how to react.
You pregnant?
He repeated, and a smile began to spread across his face. That's amazing, Emily. We're going to have a baby. His joy was contagious, and I couldn't help but smile too. But soon the worry returned.
Jake, what about my mom? What if she finds out? What will become of her?
Doubt hung between us like a heavy cloud. He squeezed my hand, his eyes steady on mine. We're not going to let her ruin this. We have to face this together, for ourselves and for our son, he said with a determination that calmed me. I agreed, but the fear still remained. Over the next few days, I found myself reflecting on my relationship with Margaret. It was time to face the truth. I couldn't allow her to continue to control my life, especially now that there was a new life to consider. The love I felt for Jake was greater than any fear my mother could instill in me. Meanwhile, Margaret did not sit still. She found out where we were and, like a storm, decided to come to us. The tension grew when I saw his car park in front of our house.
My heart raced.
Jake, she's here, I whispered, panic taking over me. Let's face this head on, he replied, trying to give me strength. But I knew that the battle that was about to take place was much more than just an argument. It was about our love, our family, and how we could protect ourselves. Margaret entered, as if she were at home, and the atmosphere became heavy. Emily, I can't believe you did that. You're putting yourself in a sticky situation, as she said, her voice sharp, but I wasn't going to let her get me down. I'm doing this out of love, Mom. And you need to understand that I'm not going to let you ruin this, I replied, a little more confident than I felt. I looked at Jake, who was next to me, and saw that he shared my determination. Margaret, we are stronger than you think. And now, with the arrival of our son, we will not allow you to interfere with our happiness, Jake declared, his voice firm. The look of disbelief on her face was visible, but I knew this conversation was just the beginning. Tension was in the air, and the battle for our happiness was about to begin. Sunlight filtered through the curtains in my room, and I was there, sitting on the bed, lost in thought. What would become of my life now? Pregnancy brought me a wave of happiness, but also a whirlwind of uncertainty. Jake and I were in a better place, away from my mother's oppressive influence, but Margaret's shadow still loomed over us. The cell phone rang, and when I looked at the screen, my heart skipped a beat. It was Jake.
Hi, love. How are you?
His voice was a balm amidst the chaos.
Hi, Jake.
I'm fine, thinking about everything, and us. I felt a lump in my throat.
And you? Me too.
I've been called for an interview at a company that could be a big step for us. I'm nervous but excited. Anxiety mixed with hope. This is amazing. You're going to rock it.
I hope so.
But, Emily, we need to talk about your mother. I know she's still a shadow in our lives. I closed my eyes for a moment, remembering the last time I saw her. The anger and pain were still fresh in my memory.
I know, Jake.
I really don't know how to deal with this. She still doesn't know I'm pregnant. Maybe it's time to face it. We can't live in fear of her forever. Those words resonated with me. I needed to be strong, not just for myself, but for our son.
You're right. I'll talk to her.
After a long day of internal battles, I decided it was time to face my mother. I called Margaret and, with a trembling voice, asked her to come to our house. The expectation consumed me. When she arrived, the tension was palpable. Emily, as she began, her voice cold. What do you want to talk about?
I want you to listen, Mom.
Not just about me, but about our family. My voice cracked, but I took a deep breath and continued. I'm pregnant, and Jake is the father. We need you, and I need you to really listen to me. Margaret showed a slight sign of surprise, but soon regained her composure. Do you really think this is a good time to talk about this? You and Jake have no future. You can't go on like this. You're hurting us both, and now the new life that's coming. I was starting to lose control, but I needed to be firm. Mom, I need you to see how much what you did hurt me. And now you could lose us forever if you don't change. She hesitated, her eyes were teary. Emily, I only want what's best for you. I'm afraid of losing you. But you're already losing me. Look at us, we're fighting to be happy. And your coldness is only pushing us away. I looked into her eyes and saw a spark of something I hadn't seen before, vulnerability. I'm sorry, Margaret finally spoke, her voice breaking. I didn't know how to deal with it. My own mother. She never supported me, and I don't want you to go through the same thing. I just wanted to protect you. Those words were like a blow to my chest. Mom, I want you to be part of my life, your grandson's life. We need you. But that will only happen if you decide to change. Margaret's expression softened, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of regret. I want to try, Emily. Please let me do this. The conversation unfolded in a sea of emotions. We talked about the past, about the wounds that marked us and the promises of a different future. It was as if the walls that separated us were starting to crumble. When Jake returned home, he couldn't believe what was happening. What happened? He asked, his eyes shining with expectation. She wants to try, Jake. She wants to be a part of our lives. The words came out like a breath of relief. The next day, Jake received news about the job offer. The happiness was palpable, and the new phase that was beginning seemed more promising than ever. I looked at him, love overflowing in my heart. We're ready for this, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Jake smiled, and in that moment, everything seemed to fall into place. Margaret had begun to redeem herself, and we as a family were ready to face whatever lay ahead together, with love and hope. Destiny, after all, had a surprising way of guiding us.